Alright, so since this season of Sweet TV has been wrapped up for a while now, I'm gonna give you a spoiler warning. This video is gonna have spoilers for season 1 of the show. Also, this video may or may not include spoilers for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Just throwing that out there. So here we go. The Mandalorian, Season 1. Yes, after months and months of anticipation and waiting, Disney Plus is finally among us. We can now watch all our favorite Disney movies in one convenient location, but of course the streaming service is also going to have its own original material. Chief among them, the first live-action TV show set in the Star Wars universe, The Mandalorian. And of course this show blew up. If you haven't watched it, you've heard of it at least. The internet loves it thanks to one particular character. You know who it is. It's not the Mandalorian himself. I'll get to who it is in just a minute. So The Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. The Galactic Empire has fallen, but really there are a lot of remains of the Empire. You know, there are still stormtroopers out there. They really work as mercenaries now. The galaxy far, far away is in a state of limbo. We have our main character, the Mandalorian, as he's known throughout most of the show, or Mando for short. He's just going about his business, you know, he's doing his jobs, getting paid for doing his jobs, as we Star Wars fans are familiar with Mandalorian bounty hunters doing. But this particular Mandalorian, now this is kind of spoilers for episode 1 of the show, his job in the first episode is to find this item and deliver it to someone. This item, come to find out, turns out to be a 50-year-old infant who happens to be the same species as Yoda. And yeah, take a look at that thing. It's hard not to get attached. This, of course, is the character that has taken the internet by storm. People have dubbed it Baby Yoda. And the Mandalorian starts to become attached to this little Baby Yoda, and he says, you know what? Instead of giving this child to you, I'm gonna keep him for myself because God knows what you're gonna do to it. This happens in like the 3rd episode. Mando has committed a sin against the Bounty Hunter Guild code by not completing his job and taking this item for himself. And the adventure goes on from there. Now, honestly speaking, I love this show. It's great. Like from the first episode, I was like, this is classic Star Wars. From the production design, all the planets look real, like they're lived in. Most of the creatures are, you know, practical effects, or if they're not, it's really good CGI. The character of the Mandalorian, or I'm gonna spoil his real name right now. His real name is Din Djarin. His actual name wasn't revealed until, you know, the last episode of the season. But Din Djarin, he's played by Pedro Pascal. And yeah, for a lot of it, well, for most of it, all of it except for one scene, you don't see him without his mask on. But I have heard that it was always Pedro Pascal under all that armor and the helmet doing all the acting. You can certainly tell it's his voice. But what I like about Din Djarin is that he's not like your average shoot-'em-up badass. You know, he's not Han Solo. He won't just shoot anyone at the first sign of danger. I mean, he does his best, but he's not, you know, God mode. In a lot of the action scenes, he gets his ass kicked quite a few times, and he does require some help from whoever happens to be with him at the time. That's actually quite refreshing. Like so many times these days, you know, like Rey, for example, she's like, no, she can take care of any bad guy just on her own. Every time, she never takes damage. She's OP. The Mandalorian, like pretty early on in the show, he gets new armor that's all, you know, shiny and new, and throughout the season, he still gets all dinged up. He's not the most skilled Mandalorian out there, or the biggest. Like, you know, there's that place where all the Mandalorian bounty hunters, they all hide out. And you take a look at some of the other Mandalorians in there, and they're like huge. They're big, burly ones. You feel like, yeah, that big one could beat the crap out of our Din, which makes Din Djarin relatable. You know, he's human. Honestly, though, one of my favorite characters in the entire season is that IG model, IG-11, voiced by Taika Waititi of all people. He shows up in the first episode as someone who's also after the child. He had orders to terminate it, but Mandalorian stopped him by blasting a hole in his head. That's just in the first episode, but IG-11 shows up later on in the show, I think episode 6, or actually I think it was 7. He was found and reprogrammed to now be a protective nurse droid. But the reason I love this character so much is because, first of all, he has like the coolest action scenes in the entire show. Like in the last episode where he's riding on the speeder protecting little Baby Yoda, he's like shooting all these people just with pinpoint accuracy. I mean, even in the first episode when he comes strolling in and shooting all these stormtroopers, I was like, this guy is a badass. This dude is pretty much God mode. Just again, the way he twirls around and, you know, does this with his arms, you know that target lock is just going off. Boom, boom, boom. That is awesome. Plus, that is actually Taika Waititi in motion capture. You wouldn't know it by me because visually, yeah, that just looks like a practical droid, like animatronic or something. That is just super visually impressive. The visual effects in this show are just out of this world, as we saw in the trailers. Everything from the environments to some of the creatures. You got the scene with the big AT-ST walker in the 4th episode. Big old thing with the red eyes is like strolling up. I'm like, that looks big and real and terrifying. But honestly, the thing that really made me go, yeah, this is classic Star Wars, is the fact that they wipe. I didn't see that coming. The first time that happened in the first episode, I was like, oh my god, okay, they're wiping. This is classic vintage Star Wars. It just really threw me off guard. I'm like, oh yeah, Star Wars movies wipe. That's like a classic tradition dating back to day one. I love it when they keep up traditions like that. Although now that I think about it, did anyone in this entire season say the line, I have a bad feeling about this? I don't remember hearing it this season. Uh-oh. Maybe I'm just forgetting. If someone did say that line of the season and I just forgot, remind me in the comments. You have Cara Dune, played by Gina Carano, who we first meet in the 4th episode. She's an ex-rebel shock trooper who ends up befriending the Mandalorian and helping that village of farmers overcome the bandits that steal their food. That was the episode, where the bandits had that big AT-ST walker. Good stuff. I really like that episode in particular, actually. Of course, the character that is the reason people love the show is our Baby Yoda. To me, Baby Yoda is like one of those characters that's like so ugly it's cute, like a pug or something. Cause sure, it's an infant, but it does have wrinkles on its forehead. But the reason I like Baby Yoda personally is because, yeah, Baby Yoda is practical. He's a puppet. It's visually accentuated with CGI, sure, but for the most part, all its facial expressions, the eyes, the ears, all practical and super, super effective. They work when this thing is just being playful, by taking the ball off the lever and playing with it, when it's smiling and waving, or when it's scared. You feel protective of it, just like the Mandalorian does, which helps you relate to him. Since the Mandalorian decided to keep Baby Yoda for himself, people are after him now, because they want Baby Yoda. So for a chunk of the show, the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda are on the run. In episode 5, which I consider the most fan service-y episode of the whole season, and it's because they go to Tatooine. Not only Tatooine, they go to Mos Eisley. They go to the Mos Eisley Cantina. I was like, of all places in the galaxy, we have to go to the planet that we are most familiar with, that we've seen in a few Star Wars movies at this point. Let's see, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 9. We have seen Tatooine in most of the core Star Wars movies. Now we see it again in The Mandalorian. That being said, it was nice to see Tatooine again. That one woman who's super nice with her pit droids from the prequels. That one smarmy douchebag who's trying to be Han Solo but will never be nearly as cool as Han Solo. His acting in particular I thought could have been better. And yeah, I didn't think the show was completely perfect. There are a couple of nitpicks I have about it, sure. Like sometimes the writing I thought was a little weak. I don't really have any specific examples in my head, but just throughout the show I noticed things where I'm like, alright, that could have been written better, or that thing just doesn't really make a lot of sense. If there's one episode that I just could have done without, it's episode 6. The one where the Mandalorian joins that crew of shady people. He joins them to do a job, but then it just turns out to be a ruse to screw him over. That whole episode, I was honestly just half paying attention to because I'm like, not much is going on here. This is kind of halting the main story of the season. Which, yeah, I will say, a lot of the show does feel episodic, but at least it was interesting. This episode, I wasn't too interested in, because I'm like, all these people are douchebags. Why do you trust them? You don't. In the end, he gets out of there, and it's actually great. I love the end, because he leaves that tracking fob with them, and you see these X-Wings show up, and they're like, hey, look, bad guys, and they just end up blowing the place up. That was great. And then in episode 7, he goes back to Navarro, the planet where he was first assigned the mission to obtain Baby Yoda, because Carl Weathers' Grief Karga calls him back, and he was gonna turn on them, but he ended up getting hurt, and Baby Yoda did the Force healing, which if you remember in my Star Wars Rise of Skywalker spoiler talk, I was like, yeah, that episode came out right before that movie came out, so by the time I saw Rise of Skywalker, I was familiar with the concept of Force healing, because Baby Yoda did it in episode 7 of The Mandalorian. But then it ends on that cliffhanger, and I was like, oh my god, the cliffhanger, where the stormtroopers kill the Ugnaught Queel, voiced by Nick Nolte, and they snatch up Baby Yoda, leading right into episode 8, the finale of season 1. And I just gotta say, the beginning of episode 8 with that dialogue between those two stormtroopers, that was hilarious. The episode was directed by Taika Waititi, and I didn't even put that together because I was like, yeah, this is funny. I'm not used to Taika Waititi humor being all that funny. Thor Ragnarok had some funny parts, sure, but I never really laughed out loud or belly laughed at Thor Ragnarok. The beginning of this episode, I was laughing out loud because it was hilarious. The stormtroopers trying to shoot at the thing on the ground and they keep missing. But here's one of the parts where I was like, that writing didn't make much sense. Like, because they are punching, they got Baby Yoda in a bag, and they actually give it some solid punches, which I'm like, how dare they? Like, Baby Yoda gets socked in the face. You would think Baby Yoda would at least be bruised after that, but no, he's not bruised at all. That was kind of unrealistic, I suppose, but that is a really slight nitpick. Really, the big revelations of this episode, chapter 8, they were pretty freaking cool. Because this guy comes out, Moff Gideon, played by Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, and he pretty much spills the beans onto the backstories of Din Djarin and Cara Cynthia Dune. You learn that Cara Dune is from Alderaan, as in the planet that the Death Star blew up in the very first Star Wars movie, and we learn the backstory of Din Djarin. You learn that he was a child when the Mandalorians first found him and rescued him from the super battle droids, as in the battle droids from the prequels. His village was being raided by these super battle droids, and he was rescued by a clan of Mandalorians. So they took him in, and he became one. You learn that Mandalorian is not a race, it's a creed. A way of life, a lifestyle. This is the way. It's a religion. And one of the biggest rules of that religion is that you are not allowed to take off your mask in front of living things. If you do, you can never put it on again. So I predicted, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be the last episode of the season. Are we gonna see him take off his mask in front of someone, therefore breaking his moral code? He gets gets shot in the neck and he's gonna die because he's got that wound on his head. So in order for them to heal him, he has to take off his mask. IG-11 comes up, he's like, I can give you a Bacterial spray if you remove your helmet. Din is like, I can't take off my mask in front of living things. And IG-11 responds, I am not a living thing. I thought, yeah, alright, I'd totally buy that. That's clever. We see him take off his mask and yeah, it's Pedro Pascal. But then, yeah, he can put it back on and still not take it off in front of people since IG-11 is not a living thing. So technically he didn't break his rule and his life was saved. There's that too. I also gotta say, it is a shame that IG-11 did the self-sacrifice, because they were going down that lava river with that R2 unit with the arms and legs. Holy shit, that scared the fuck out of me. Like when I saw it rise and, you know, have arms and legs, I was like, oh my god, no, my god, okay, I'm not gonna sleep tonight. That's too much. Ugh, that's an abomination. Jon Favreau, never show us that again. Ever. But anyway, they get to the end of the tunnel, there are all those stormtroopers and IG-11 has to make the hard call, and he blows himself up. Rest in pieces, IG-11. But perhaps the biggest revelation of the entire episode comes in at the very end, when Moff Gideon comes out of his wrecked TIE fighter because Mandalorian took it down with his jetpack, which was really cool. He comes out and it turns out he has the Dark Saber, a weapon which I'd only heard about because I know it was in the cartoons, but I never watched the Star Wars cartoons, Star Wars Clone Wars, or Rebels. I don't know, I just never cared to watch them. But when Moff Gideon came out with the Dark Saber, I was like, holy shit. So, okay, that's making the cartoons officially canon now. I mean, I always knew they were canon, but now it's like officially canon. Somehow, for me anyway, seeing it in live action is what makes it officially Star Wars canon. And yeah, I gotta admit, that Darksaber is a pretty sick looking saber. I'm looking forward to seeing it in live action in season 2. But most importantly, this season ends with Din Djarin taking up the father figure role of this little baby Yoda. They are a clan of 2 now, which yeah, I really like that. You know, this man who was used to working on his own is now going to learn how to love. Sappy? Yeah, sure, maybe a little. But again, we relate to Din Djarin here because we all love Baby Yoda at this point. So I'm looking forward to seeing where they go in season 2. Are we gonna see these characters again? You know, Cara Dune, Greef Karga, Moff Gideon, of course we're gonna see him in season 2 because we gotta see him use that Darksaber. That's gonna be pretty cool. Guys, in the end, The Mandalorian season 1, yeah, I thought was thoroughly entertaining. Visually, it was stunning. I love the characters. The script, you know, some of the writing could have been stronger at a few points, sure, but generally speaking, I have no complaints about it. And the music in this show is awesome. Ludwig Göransson, man, and what I love is that every episode had its own soundtrack, which does make sense given the scale of the show. And I love that theme music that plays during the credits. Dun, da, 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 it's really good stuff, you know. It's a bold departure from the orchestral John Williams style music that we're used to in Star Wars, but the fact that it's so different is kind of why I like it. It's saying, yeah, this is its own thing, its own pocket of the Star Wars universe, and I for one thoroughly dig that. If this is setting the stage for all the live action Marvel and Star Wars TV shows coming to Disney Plus, then I am completely on board. So, The Mandalorian season 1, have you watched it? What did you think about it? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.